shit, I'm gonna sneeze. Was not the right timing for a sneeze.
Oh man, Jabari Parker played a bunch last night. I didn't see that.
He's on the Celtics now, correct?
Yeah.
And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Sunday, April 18th. I am Josh Engleman, and I am joined by the boss man, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Alex, how are you?
Doing good, man. Last night was a crazy one with all the UFC, and you were telling me before the show about some Jake Paul, Logan Askren. Is that? Oh wait, no, Logan Paul is Ben Askren.
Askren, yes.
And
good time.
Those seemed pretty good, but the NBA slate didn't go exactly like I was hoping.
Luckily, I dodged that NBA slate. I was being nothing but entertained by Snoop being absolutely hilarious on commentary for the fight. Ben Askren he got lit up. It was kind of wild, and I'm really anxious to see where Jake Paul goes from here because he's going to print some money. Being able to knock him out, essentially knock him out legitimately. Like, to me, he dropped him clean. That's a highlight reel, and he's going to make a lot of money on his next fight, which is kind of crazy. I mean, like millions of dollars. So good for him. It's fun.
So it's like a really unorthodox way to get into fighting where like you become an influencer first,
yeah,
and then you like cash that into like these pay-per-views. Like that's an amazing business strategy.
I mean, we're at a point now where like it's a legitimate avenue for a lot of people. You can just sort of put on your own show or get involved here. I mean, I think they did a staggering amount of pay-per-view buys last night at $50 a pop, which is wild. Absolutely wild.
I hope some of our friends that are influencers like Chris Randone get back in the fight game because I'd pay $50 for that.
As long as he's the Ben Askren in this scenario, that works for me. Anyway, we've got a 5-gamer here. Last Sunday, we had a little bit bigger of a slate. This one's pretty manageable, so we shouldn't have too many issues here. Be sure to hit that like button as you get in the door. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. You guys know the drill. We're going to take a look at lineup study to kick this one off before we actually get into the games. Last night, Mr. McGiblets 11 taking down $100,000. Nickelback for life coming in a close second. Alex, you hanging out anywhere up top?
No.
no Rin packs around. I'm just so used to seeing Rin pack in the top 5 here. He's constantly winning.
It was a tough slate, man, because I mean, with San Antonio resting 3 guys, everyone was looking at DeJounte Murray to get a bump. Drew Eubanks came through, but none of the other Spurs really did. So that one was really tough. The Spurs won in a blowout versus Phoenix while resting like 3 guys. So that was very unexpected. And then Boston kind of came through. So if you just played Boston, you faded the Spurs except for Eubanks. And then the Pistons got absolutely stomped. Josh Jackson had 17 points, 0 peripherals, which is pretty notable. So the Pistons, if you avoided every single Piston, who I think some of them were kind of good plays, then I guess you could have a good night.
Yeah, winning lineup was pretty heavily owned too. Marcus Smart, Grayson Allen, Dylan Brooks, Jason Tatum, who went off for 44 real points last night. Drew Eubanks, Kemba Walker, Rudy Gay, and Steph Curry. So the Walker, Tatum, Smart trio all performing pretty well. Highest owned player on the slate last night, Russell Westbrook, $10,900, 51% owned against the Pistons. Went for 56.5. Pedestrian day by Russell Westbrook standards. He has been insane as of late. Would you like to hear how insane?
I mean, I still remember that season where he was playing without Durant, and then he had a triple-double like every game, basically like he was like an auto lock at like every day of the season.
He has gone for north of 50 fantasy points in 14 straight games.
Damn.
Wild stuff.
I mean,
56.5 is like a letdown.
56 sounds good until you see Steph Curry like scored 47 real life points.
Absolutely.
That's pretty crazy.
It is a crazy day. Shouts to Mr. McGiblets11 for picking up 100K yesterday. And shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor. We'll touch on them in a little bit. But Alex, we got 5 games ahead of us. I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Alrighty, here we go. We're kicking it off with the Portland Trailblazers at the Charlotte Hornets. Hornets are 5-point dogs at home, 221 total. We know the Hornets have been walking wounded as of late, just constant injuries. Devontae Graham questionable in this one, PJ Washington questionable. And then we know the guys that are already out. Gordon Hayward out, Malik Monk out, LaMelo Ball out. But that's not the only injuries that we have in this game. Dame Lillard going to be out for this one. So we've got CJ McCollum, 7,900 on Fanduel, 8,700 on Draftkings. Is it CJ season for you today?
Hey, I don't know. I mean, I think the price tag seems somewhat appealing at 8,700 on DraftKings, 7,900 on FanDuel. Damian Lillard being out, like that's a big bump. But I don't know. Like he's not jumping out in my numbers here, so I'm trying to look at this and figure out exactly why.
Reasonable.
So I guess just like the rest of the team is pretty high usage. So I guess maybe CJ isn't getting the biggest bump, but replacing Derek Jones in the starting lineup for Damian Lillard, that seems like it should make a huge impact. What are you seeing with the Blazers here?
I think CJ looks pretty good at 7,900 on FanDuel. Just with the usage bump that he gets and with the a little bit of the assist bump that he gets, that $7,900 price tag works. I think he looks like he's obviously a good play on the DK side of it at 8,700, but I don't think he's some overwhelming value for today. It's just part of like the list. I actually like Norm Powell quite a bit, 6,300 on both sites. He is someone that can soak up a little bit more usage in comparison to previously when it was someone like Gary Trent. Norm Powell is going to be a slightly higher usage guy. So I see both of those guys looking okay. Do you have any interest? Like, would you expect Anthony Simons to be viable today? He's a bit of a value play, sub 4K. Played 29.9 minutes in this last game with Dame out. To me, at 3,600, he's at least a viable value option.
Yeah, I think he's in play. He's always really inconsistent with the minutes because I guess they just don't like to play him that much. So you got to worry that maybe Derek Jones plays a little bit more next game, and then Simons plays a little bit less. But Simons is a good fantasy producer. He has a pretty solid usage at 20% on the season. And he picks up some assists, 13% assist percentage on the season. So he's a pretty good fantasy producer for that price tag, but the minutes are a big question mark. And I'm not really buying into 29 minutes because Lillard's been out a bunch. CJ's been out a bunch. If Simons has never really played that much consistently. So what are you expecting with Simons today?
So I think that he gets pretty normal run, at least for the first 3 rotations. And then all bets are off if he ends up being the closer in this spot. Taking on Charlotte, it probably doesn't matter. They tend to lean a little smaller just in general. But I think it's certainly in the realm of possibility that Derek Jones could close that game if he needed to. I don't think that it would be surprising at all for Simons to not get that 4th rotation if that happens. So I like him, but I'm a little apprehensive about it. And at 4K on FanDuel, I need him a lot less than I would at 3,600 on DK.
Definitely, yeah. On FanDuel, I'll probably avoid him too. 3,600 is pretty good. The only question is like, how are these injuries going to shake out? Because no one of note is out yet on tonight's slate except Lillard. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see because like a lot of teams have questionable players.
On the Charlotte side, again, we've got the Q tag on PJ Washington. We've got the Q tag on Devontae Graham. Both of those pieces of news are very important for the trickle down for Charlotte. So it does become a little difficult to talk about them. And we saw Vernon Carey get the start the last time out, which was not something that I was expecting, nor was I expecting for them to flip-flop the Martin twins, which is also incredibly confusing when it happens and you're not really paying attention. So I guess let's start here. Any thoughts on Devontae Graham and PJ Washington? Are you assuming these guys will be in today?
So I think it's tough to know because Charlotte, they are trying to compete for playoffs. So I assume these guys actually are injured and not resting.
Yeah.
Devontae Graham, I think he looks like a pretty good play if he's in because obviously Gordon Hayward and LaMelo have been out for a while. That creates a big vacuum as far as playmaking, and Graham should be one of the guys picking up the slack there, and he's been getting a lot of minutes. PJ Washington, like them starting Vernon Carey as center last game really shows how much they don't want to play Bismack Biyombo and Cody Zeller because Vernon Carey hasn't played all year. I guess he's like a second round draft pick in the last draft. So that
Former
was his...
Dookie.
Oh, nice. So I mean, if PJ Washington's out, I feel like Carey, like after last game playing like 35 minutes, like we got to go back to them. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So Carey right now, 4K on Fanduel, coming in at definitely a price on DraftKings that for some reason isn't pulling through. Does he have a junior on his name on his salary? Yep. Is that what's catching me? Yeah, he does. I got to add him to my list. I don't know if the Vernon Carey Jr. section, he comes in as just Vernon Carey on FanDuel, so it's coming in clean. I don't know if he gets that same sort of run. If PJ Washington's in, I don't think that Vernon Carey ends up being a viable play. If he's out, I assume they start him again. They don't really have any reason to go to Bismack Biyombo or Zeller in this spot. It's probably better for them to see the minutes that they can get for Carey. And I think that he ends up being an okay value play. And I don't really have all that much interest in PJ Washington on the FanDuel side, even if he's in. He's 6,300 there, but he's only 5,300 on DraftKings. Are you interested in PJ Washington if he's in the game?
I think so, yeah. And DraftKings, as you mentioned, a lot cheaper, so that'd be the main spot to look for him. He's someone that like this team is really lacking rebounding right now, and PJ is starting at center, so I expect him to get a nice rebounding rate if he is starting at center. And I think we've seen him play monster minutes as well throughout the year when some guys are out. So I think the potential is there for sure.
The one guy we still need to touch on here, 7,500 on FanDuel, 8,300 on DraftKings. Terry Rozier soaks up a ton of usage with all of these guys out. Kind of just becomes his team. Is he someone you're going to be getting to? To me, at that $7,500 price tag on FanDuel looks pretty good. I actually prefer him to CJ McCollum on FanDuel, even at the $400 cheaper price tag. How are you feeling about Terry Rozier for today?
Yeah, that's a bold call here. I like it. I think on FanDuel at 7,500, he's playable. Over the last 5 games, it looks like his assist rate has gone up a good amount with some of the other guys out. The usage has gone up a little bit. So I think his rates have gone up, but it's not like so much that it justifies this 8,300 price tag on DraftKings. I think that's just a little bit too much.
Agreed.
But the minutes these last 2 games have been insane. Like he's played more than 40 minutes in both of them. So it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, if he's going to be getting 40 minutes, it's really hard to not want to look at Terry Rozier, or really pretty much anybody that plays is almost permanently in play. If you're going to get 40 minutes, it's really tough otherwise.
Yeah,
okay, so go ahead.
If Graham plays, I wouldn't expect that to be the norm. So sure. That's going to make a difference. If Graham is out, then maybe we see like 36 plus a night out of Rozier. That's not too hard to buy into.
Are you going back, if they are out, are you going back to the Martin twins? Caleb 3,900 on FanDuel. Cody is 3,800 on DraftKings. Caleb is 4,400. Cody is 3,900. And I keep saying that as if I have any idea which one's which.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I feel. Like, I just know that whoever's starting is the one you want to target. This is the first game of the slate, or one of them. So that one should be easy. 3 games ago when Caleb started, he played 35 minutes. But then off the bench last game, I guess he played 30 minutes, but he also got out the closing run. So that was a little bit fluky. Cody Martin last game played like 35 minutes. So if he is starting with Graham out, then I mean, I think Cody Martin is really underpriced, and Caleb Martin would certainly be a good play too.
Anything else you want to touch on from either Portland or Charlotte for this one?
Jalen McDaniels has been getting crazy minutes. I think that he's not the best per minute producer, but certainly someone I feel comfortable with rostering.
Okay, sounds good. Let's keep it moving here. Houston Rockets, Orlando Magic. This one was a pick'em when I looked at it, and you don't really see a lot of pick'ems in the NBA. There's always shaded somewhere, but I saw a straight pick'em. Anyway, 221 total. For Houston, we've got no John Wall, along with the other 27 dudes that have been out for Houston as of late. On the Orlando side, Michael Carter-Williams out, Otto Porter Jr. out, Mo Bamba questionable. So we can start on the Houston side. Christian Wood is 8K on Fanduel, 8,500 on DraftKings. We've got Kevin Porter Jr., who's been playing a ton of minutes, 6,500 on Fanduel, 6,600 on DK. Avery Bradley's been falling into a bunch of minutes as of late. He's the flat minimum on Fanduel, 3,500 on DK as well. What stands out most to you from the Houston Rockets today?
Well, I think Wall being out, he's played the last 4 games, so there's some potential here for some value. The two guys that are really going to benefit the most, I think, are Kevin Porter Jr., who, I mean, we saw when he first started playing for the Rockets that when he's got the ball in his hands, he's dangerous in fantasy.
Yeah,
6,600 on DraftKings and 6,500 on FanDuel. That's one of the better plays of the slate, I think. And the other guy I'm looking at is Avery Bradley. He picked up a start last time Wall was out, so I think he's a guy that he can make up some of the playmaking deficit on this team because Olynyk and Wood really don't do a lot of playmaking. So I remember back a few years ago when Bradley was on the Grizzlies, he actually got a lot of assists. So it wouldn't be the craziest if with Wall out, his assist rate goes up, and his price is really good at 3,500 on both sites.
Yeah, he has been putrid as of late. 0.58 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days is all sorts of awful. But when you're the flat minimum, I think that you can soak that up, especially if we're expecting you to play north of 30 minutes potentially. Can you get to Kelly Olynyk here? Price is 6,300 on FanDuel, 6,800 on DraftKings. I think he looks okay, but that seems to be like the upper bound for me in terms of what Olynyk's salary can be, where you can actually find an upside.
Yeah, definitely. 6,300. That's a reasonable price tag. Nothing that's going to get you too excited. So I think since being on the Rockets, he has been getting the minutes. It looks like his rates haven't changed a ton, but his usage is a little bit up, which makes sense because Houston has less talent than the Heat. But what I'm really looking at is the minutes. So the last game, he didn't play in the fourth quarter, but he played 27 minutes in the first 3. So that would put him on pace for like 36 if he closed, or 35, sorry. And then 2 games ago, he did play 38 minutes. So the minutes upside is crazy. And I mean, that's enough to get me pretty interested.
Alrighty. On the Orlando side, with no Michael Carter-Williams, that opens up a little bit more playing time once again for Cole Anthony. The bigger question then will be, do we get Mo Bamba, and what is the impact then for Wendell Carter Jr., who's been soaking up quite a bit of time as of late? He is 6,400 on both sites today. I don't have a ton that I'm liking from Orlando. I rarely do. Most of these guys aren't very good on the offensive side of the ball, and they aren't very good as a team just in general. But 5K Cole Anthony, if he is starting with no Michael Carter-Williams, 5,800 on DK, he would be my priority. But even then, I don't think that he is some more so on FanDuel at 5K. I do actually like him quite a bit. 5,800 on DraftKings, to me, he looks good, not great.
A matchup versus Houston will make anyone look good. So I think Cole Anthony is pretty intriguing. The last game where Michael Carter-Williams was out, which was their last game. Sorry for the phrasing there. So I think Cole Anthony, he played about 29 minutes. So that's a little bit disappointing because with Chase and Randall being the backup point guard, I would hope that Cole Anthony would get more run. Still a possibility, but that data point kind of makes me a little hesitant. But on FanDuel at 5K, his salary is really good. On 5,800 on DraftKings, maybe just a guy to sprinkle in a little bit.
Over the past 30 days, the Orlando Magic have played 22 different basketball players. That is insane. Considering you can only have 15 on your roster at a time, that's how much turnover they had coming out of the trade deadline. 22 different guys have stepped on the floor for the Magic since March 19th.
That is crazy. I didn't even know that's possible.
Yeah, neither did I. I refreshed my minutes table and it was just like way further down on the screen than it normally is when I do that for everything that's happened over the past 30 days. Yeah, they've played a lot of different people. And I don't get the sense that that's going to slow down as we work our way towards the end of the season. Is there anybody else you're looking at from Orlando, whether that's, I don't know, Chumo, Kiki, Gary Harris? I just feel like I'm naming a lot of guys that are all like 0.75 fantasy point per minute guys.
I think Wendell Carter Jr. is pretty interesting. He's been getting good minutes the last few. There always is a little bit of foul risk, but he's got that upside. And if Mo Bamba sits, he's been backed up by Donta Hall, which would look even better because Mo Bamba, when he's played, has been winning some more minutes. So I do see Wendell Carter as one of the better center options today.
Excellent. Any final thoughts, Houston or Orlando? I want this game to be better than it is, but boy, is that going to be a tough watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good watch if you want to find out who the up-and-coming players are, if we're being generous. So
yeah.
I think this one's actually pretty good because Wall is out. You got the value on Houston. And then Orlando's got a nice matchup. So I do see this one as being better for fantasy than for watchability.
Guys, just because it's Sunday doesn't mean we don't have a ton of content for you. Coming up after this show, not immediately after, but close to immediate. At noon Eastern time, MLB Live Before Lock, EMAC and Max will be breaking it all down for baseball today, all the way up to that 1 o'clock lock. And we've got some basketball shows coming up later in the day. NBA Deeper Dive, EMAC pulling double sport duty as well. A legend on the weekends. EMAC and Terry taking you, doing about an hour NBA Deeper Dive, then turning it over to Jason Floyd and Eric Lindquist for NBA Live Before Lock from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Going to be a good one. No giveaways right now. I should have removed that wording from my own run sheet, tripping myself up. I'll read anything that's on the teleprompter. But I do have a bit of a promo for you. UFC 261 is the promo. So that's UFC 261. You can see that link. Nightbot dropped that into YouTube chat a little bit earlier. But we've got Usman Masvidal coming up next Saturday, or I guess this Saturday, now that Saturday is already over. April 24th. It's way easier to say the date in that regard. You can get an Awesemo Plus MMA monthly pass for 50% off. That's $14.95 for 30 days of Awesemo Plus MMA. Projections, ownership, top fighters tool, lineup builder, access to Slack, and you'll also get access to the second pay-per-view after this. If you sign up, you will still get coverage all the way to UFC 262. Now, don't enter UFC 262 as the promo code. That will fail. It's still just UFC 261. But you'll be able to have this for 2 pay-per-view cards in a row. That covers the full 30 days. You can't beat that. That is an incredible deal. And this Usman Masvidal fight, along with the rest of the fights on this card, it's a pretty loaded card. I'm pretty excited for it next Saturday. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I saw one of our own took down the big UFC tournament yesterday, Steve Buzzard. So that was pretty exciting.
Nice.
I've had a lot of luck in MMA too. So if you guys are looking for some more DFS sports to try out, I definitely find MMA pretty interesting. Like the game theory is really cool because in other sports, like you don't have that dynamic where like the one guy like wins and one loses, and then you throw in the upset potential in UFC, and that makes it all like really fun.
Yeah, shout out to Steve DeColt if you're ever looking for him. Chopped first yesterday, 67,500, takes it all down. Good for him. That's exciting. Nothing too crazy either. I mean, a couple low owned guys, but nobody in the like single digits or anything. Nothing truly random.
The big randomness last night happened because Close and Stevens, like right at like the start of the broadcast, they got announced as not fighting or something. So the total yesterday was wild. No, what happened?
So Jeremy Stevens shoved Drakkar Close after the weigh-ins, so much so that it basically gave him like a little bit of whiplash and a concussion.
What?
And so yeah, he tried to get treatment, ended up getting sick. Like the concussion was causing him to throw up, so they had to scratch the fight.
That is like the weakest reason I've ever heard to scratch that UFC fight. But I guess not based on the symptoms, just based on like a shove, like because they're always like posturing during those weigh-ins. That just seems like normal fare for them.
He lit him up pretty good. Like it was very clearly like a strong shove, and like just the spot that he hit him. Like he did give it one of those recoils, but so not great. Stevens was coming off a knockout loss, so I was hoping he was going to get knocked out again. Not a big Jeremy Stevens fan.
I guess he did get knocked out.
He got knocked clean off the card. Clean off the card. All right, we can keep this one moving. Oklahoma City Thunder, Toronto Raptors. Raptors are 11.5 point favorites, 219.5 total. I mean, where do I even begin on this team? It'd be easier to tell you guys who's actually active. Probably get through the list a little bit faster. SGA, obviously out. Alexei Pogostick out. Josh Hall out. Gabriel Deck out. Mike Muscala out. Al Horford's been at home for ages. And then on the Toronto side, we really don't know who's going to be playing here for the Raptors. In theory, there's probably a Q tag on the entire starting lineup. They've been rotating through and resting guys a lot as of late. Wouldn't shock me if we saw somebody sit, maybe two somebody sit. But as of right now, buyer beware on Lowry, Van Vliet, Trent, Anunoby, and Siakam. We've been seeing like Kem Birch and Chris Boucher in the starting lineup. So let's knock out Oklahoma City out first. And I don't really see a lot of price tags on the DraftKings side for Oklahoma City that look all that desirable. Am I missing anything here? Because they just don't look good.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I understand the pricing because it seems like every single game, the Thunder are just resting random guys. So we probably wouldn't know that at this point. But it's tricky to figure out who would be a good fantasy play in that instance. Yeah. I guess two guys that could pick up more minutes are Svi Mikhailuk if Dort sits, or Kenrich if one of the big sits. But it's hard to get too excited about these guys. The one guy we got to talk about, though, is Lou Dort, because he just has been going insane recently. He has a 32% usage rate over the last 5 games. His assist rate has been up too. And this is not a guy we normally consider as a fantasy monster. No. So what do you make of this?
So it's really weird. I mean, he went for 65 FanDuel points a couple nights ago. Follow that up with 45. He's taken 51 shots over his last 2 games. He's 10 of 19 from 3. All of it is just kind of wacky, but we've seen with Dort on the floor and some of these guys off, he gets like a 25, 26% usage rate. Like he actually is shooting, which I don't know how much to believe in that, but I guess if you look at the rest of the Oklahoma City roster, he's just looking at it like, well, somebody's got to do this. It might as well be me. That said, I mean, 6,200 on FanDuel, 6,900 is such a monstrous price. Even if you want to give him all the boosts in the world, I'm going to have a hard time getting him to the 1.25 fantasy point per minute rate he's had since he's been back, which is just insane. I can't pay that freight with any sort of confidence, particularly on DraftKings. I mean, for him to pay off 6,900, you need like a truly transcendent day. And while I think that he can do it if he continues to have 40% usage, I'm not so sure that I could project him for that.
Yeah, I mean, even if I plug in his numbers from the last 5 games, he still doesn't look like a good play. So I like the talent of Dort. Yeah. Like it's really exciting because he came in as like this 3-and-D guy, and if you can get the offense going, like that's a really interesting mix. But the price tag is just like ridiculous tonight, so I don't think anyone's gonna to go to him, and I don't think I will either.
$5,700 Moses Brown on Fanduel is probably my favorite piece of this game, and that I'm not advocating for it all that hard. Just if somebody has to be the best piece of Oklahoma City, it would be Moses Brown on Fanduel for me.
Nice, yeah. Moses Brown, his price tag has gone down on FanDuel a little bit, while Tony Bradley's has come up. So it has been a little bit tough sledding for Moses Brown because it seems like Tony Bradley is someone they want to play a good amount of minutes. And the split has been like pretty close in a lot of games where Moses Brown, he seems to have really steady minutes, which isn't the best for fantasy, but we've seen earlier in the season, he can really put up monster numbers quick.
Well, let's transition this one over to the Toronto Raptors, where I don't have a clue what to truly recommend here because I have no idea who's going to play for this team. Thank God this game starts at 7:00, although you never know with Nick Nurse at this point, just given the way the Toronto season has been going. $7,300 Chris Boucher on DraftKings, probably the guy that stands out most to me, but I don't really have a big passion for much of anything from Toronto. A lot of like-priced guys at this point. None of them, when everybody is healthy and when everybody is in, they all kind of take a little bit away from each other. And some of these prices are higher recently since guys have been out. What are you looking to do with the Raptors today?
It's all going to come down to who's playing because it does seem like they have a propensity to rest guys. So I do see last game Van Vliet played, so maybe he could be a rest candidate today. The rest of the guys, I don't feel like they've rested before, so I wouldn't expect that. But if everyone plays, no one's going to get very much excitement. But Kyle Lowry has a very reasonable price point. Yeah. Last game he played a week ago, he played like 37 minutes, so I'm not worried about the minutes. And if Van Vliet's sad, I feel like Lowry, like I've had a lot of bad luck locking in Lowry on nights when Van Vliet sits. So why not one more try here? So what would you be doing if Van Vliet gets the rest today?
Yeah, if Van Vliet is out, we see Kyle Lowry get a really nice usage bump, generally speaking. And $7K on FanDuel is a price tag that I will like quite a bit. $7,700 on DraftKings. Not as enticing, but certainly still a good price. It does worry me at least a little bit. Not that I'm worried about the blowout, but Toronto season is kind of in the crapper. Kyle Lowry has missed the last 3 games. While I think that if he plays, he's playing like a relatively normal run, I don't think the 36 minutes a game that he generally sees when things are at their peak is really a viable option for him. Got him in for 34 right now. You could tell me it's 28 and I would believe you if they're just going to put if they just want to nerf the entire team moving forward. That would not surprise me at all. They've got a lot more important stuff going on. Although I guess Kyle Lowry not technically under contract for the Raptors next year, so they might as well just run him into the ground.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is around this time of the season to start worrying about stuff like that. But yeah, I do see Van Vliet's minutes last game at 24 were pretty low. He is coming off a long injury, so that's not the craziest thing for him to be limited. But if I'm looking at the other guys, Siakam played like 36 plus 3 straight games last week. So I'm not going to be worried about it quite yet.
Yeah. And the Raptors still have a lot to play for. 538 has them projected to finish with the 10th best record in the East, which would get them into the play-in tournament. I assume that is something that they would want to go for. They're a half game back of the Wizards right now and a half game back of the Bulls. So that trio is going to be fighting for that number 10 spot, which is just bonkers. I hate the play-in tournament so much. Worst gimmick in the league. I wish they didn't do it. Not a fan. Not a fan.
You don't like every team. You don't like every team making the playoffs?
Well, I would actually care a lot less if that's actually how it was. I just don't understand. Like, people are going to get up in arms about it. And it's like, why do we care so much about the 10th best team? It's like the 6th man award in the NBA. Why do we give that award out? Why the 6th guy? Why? What are we doing here? I don't understand it. What are we rewarding? The guy that's not able to start? That's craziness.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to reserve judgment until it happens because, like, having a couple of win or go home games in NBA, like, it sounds fun. But as you're saying, it's like these teams are just going to get smoked in the first round of the playoffs. So like, why get too excited?
Like I understand why it creates the source of entertainment. I just don't understand why we're entertained by, the potential. Like you said, it's a win or go home game. I don't really care who goes home or who wins between the Wizards and the Bulls when all they're going to do is they're playing to be the team that gets creamed by the Nets in 4 games. I just don't care at all. I'm weird like that. I also didn't want any expansion in the baseball playoffs. I hate all of that. I didn't want the extra play-in games in college basketball tournament. I'm just a curmudgeon. I want the best teams to play as much as possible, and that's it.
Oh, let me get your opinion on one rule change that I've been trying to push for in baseball. You know how they put that runner on second, in over extra innings?
Yes.
I feel like they should just do a power play instead and take a defender off the field.
I like it. What do you think? 2 outfielders in that scenario?
I don't know. That's what would be so interesting is the teams would have to try new stuff. I wonder if the shortstop maybe they would go with without, since it's kind of you can kind of cover the infield with 3 guys. But I'm not a baseball player, so maybe I'm not the best person to be thinking of how this would work.
Depending on the range of your 2 outfielders, I think that in that scenario, you could get by with a left center, right center. And especially depending on who is at the plate. If you've got a heavy shift type hitter, you can manage to be down a fielder a lot easier than if you've got someone that could spray the ball all over the field. And if you get some Ichiro type character out there where that ball can end up anywhere on the field, that ends up being a real problem because you might actually need that third outfielder to stop him from getting a triple immediately.
I like this suggestion from JNY in chat. He says, make basketball an official sport.
I mean, I agree. I'm surprised. We've got plenty of time for this. It doesn't matter. There's 2 games left. I'm all for, now that it's so easy to stream events, I'm all for these additional sports becoming a legitimate thing, like an ESPN, the Ocho type thing. We see cornhole on there all the time. I've been playing a lot of a new game. Family members gave it to us called Cube. Have you ever heard of Cube?
Oh, but I'm dying to hear about
it. So basically you're throwing wooden poles, basically. I don't know, yay, like the length of this lighter, maybe a little bit longer, yay thick. But you're throwing that at other chunks of wood, across the yard. You got to hit them and knock them over, and then stack them back up again and knock them over again. It's really a preposterous game, but it's oddly entertaining.
That's awesome, man. We don't do too many yard games out here in Chicago, unfortunately, but it sounds like a lot of fun.
I had 3 separate yard games set up in my yard last night: cornhole, ladder golf, and Cube. So we were having some fun yesterday.
That's sick, man.
Highly recommend everybody looks into Cube. Kubb. There we go. That's my selling point for my yard games. Now, speaking of selling points, shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this show. I could sell No House Advantage just as well as I could sell Cube. We don't have to worry about fantasy points in this one. We've got a completely different mechanism for success. We're talking about player props now. And not only are we talking about player props, but we are talking about player props where we're providing you everything if you want it. Alex, you have your No House Advantage projections on the website. So you're projecting out every stat line for these guys, and we're letting you know what are the best props that No House Advantage is offering for the day. So you're going to rank your props. There's going to be, you got to take the one you're the biggest favorite for, that's worth 10. Next one below is going to be worth 9. So it's a confidence interval all the way down. But we're giving you the goods. But not only are we ranking the props, we are also providing optimal lineups for No House Advantage. It doesn't really get much better than that. Costs you guys absolutely $0. Not only that, you can sign up at No House Advantage using the promo code Awesemo and get a $20 bonus on your first deposit. So we are providing you all of the information you need to succeed, and you are getting free money to do so when signing up. I think that it is a no-brainer outcome for you. I love that you have put this stuff together. I think it's a really great piece of content for our viewers. So beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today at No House Advantage. It's a good time, man. Don't forget to use that promo code Awesemo. Get yourself $20.
Some of these tonight are looking like gimmies. Like PJ Washington rebounds, saved the line at 3.5. Like that is insanely low. Of course, he might not play, in which case, like, it would be off the slate. But
right.
that's pretty enticing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's either going to have 0 because he's not on the floor, or most assuredly, I think that he is going to be north of 3.5. That one feels pretty darn good. Is that your best one for the day right now?
It is, yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Of course, if we get some Toronto stuff, like whoever sits there is going to really skew these lines.
Yeah.
And if you build your lineups right before lock, you can get some really lock button props.
So you gave us the PJ Washington over. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give out one under. Not that you guys can't go see this because this is actually free on the website. Nick Batum, points, rebounds, and assists. The under is the most popular or the best bet that you can have for No House Advantage based on your data today. And I will happily take an under on Nick Batum. That would be a fun one to just cheer for because it's never fun to cheer for Nick Batum. 2 games to go. We're heading to 7:30 now. We had 3 7:00 games, which is actually pretty fun for a Sunday slate. But Sacramento Kings at the Dallas Mavericks. Mavs are 8-point favorites, 228 total. Nothing too crazy here for Sacramento. We know that we aren't going to be with Rashawn Holmes, but no real news for Dallas. This is the least weird game that we have on the slate. Not a lot that we have to really worry about. We've got the Aaron Fox at 9,700 on Fanduel, 9,800 on Draftkings. Probably the best play to me coming out of Sacramento. After that, we got to figure out, here's the question for you. Is it Hassan Whiteside season today?
Wow, that makes me uncomfortable even thinking about it. But
yeah,
his game fits Fanduel better because he is good at blocks. I don't think he's the best center on today's slate, but he definitely got the run last game to make it clear that it wasn't just a fluke that he got the minutes 2 games ago. So I feel confident that he's going to get the at least biggest opportunity at center today for the Kings.
Yeah, same story here. And he's such a good per minute performer that like you don't feel all that bad getting to someone like that. When you're rostering that guy that you're not entirely sure about his minutes ceiling and he's a 0.8 guy, that starts to sting. But when you're Hassan Whiteside, he can get there in like accidental 16-minute run. And all of a sudden you're just like, oh, Whiteside had 38 fantasy points in 16 minutes because he blocked 7 shots or something weird. How are you feeling about the Aaron Fox here? That price tag getting very, very close to that 10K threshold.
Yeah, I just don't want to pay 10K for Fox because like usually when you get a guy at that price, they can score, get assists and rebound, and Fox just isn't that kind of rebounder. So I feel like he's just not on the same plane in fantasy as some of the other 10K guys.
Barnes, Halliburton, Hield. I think these guys are all priced pretty efficiently at this point. They all play this, relatively big minutes. Barnes in particular plays just actual big minutes. They've been sitting in this like high 5s, low 6s, mid 6s range for so long now. Are you seeing any value in the rest of the starters for Sacramento?
Barnes has always got a price tag where you can go to him, but he is one of those guys where it's hard to remember the last time he like won you a tournament, right? So yeah. I don't feel great about that, but 5,800 on FanDuel seems like the right price. He's been playing monster minutes, like almost 40 a night over the last 5. So I don't hate it, but I mean, it's hard to get too excited.
I'm surprised he didn't get traded at the deadline. I thought Sacramento was going to look to get rid of him.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty surprising. Okay, so Harrison Barnes has the revenge game today. Does that change your mind?
Yeah, I guess it has to. I hadn't been thinking about it previously. I forgot to look up the revenge narratives in my revenge narrative database. So unfortunately, that one slipped through the cracks. Bad on me. That just shows you how terrible of a host I am. Should have noticed that one. But no, obviously, that is not something that I will be factoring in.
Everyone knows Barnes has more revenge versus Golden State than Dallas.
Yeah. Look, I think Harrison Barnes has got to be plenty happy with the way that his career has shaken out as being worth probably $100 million in his life, has a championship ring. Toiling away in Sacramento is probably not the worst thing in the world to do when you've got a couple shekels in the bank account. Nice. On to the Dallas side. Luka Doncic, 10-4 on FanDuel, 10-9 on DraftKings. And we just really haven't seen Luka be Luka as of late. Started to snap out of it a little bit this last time out against the Knicks, went for 60 fantasy points, but he was 7 of 16 from the field, 2 for 9 from three. Just happened to have 19 assists, which is obviously a bit of an outlier performance. It's the first time that Luka has been in double digits in assists for over a month. That 60-point game was the first time that he had been north of 60 fantasy points, at least on FanDuel, in about a month. Are you going to Luka here against the Sacramento team that is absolutely porous defensively?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, usually when we're talking about slumps, I'm looking at kind of the rate data to find out, like, is there something to this or is it just kind of random?
Yeah.
So over the last 5 games, Luka's assist or usage has been 31%. On the year, it's 35%. So that is a little bit lower. The assist rate has gone up a tiny bit, and then the rebounding is down significantly. The one thing is I just really can't figure out any sort of reason why his rates would be lower, because their personnel basically has been the same the entire time.
Yeah.
So Porzingis playing a lot more minutes. Like, it feels like Porzingis doesn't make an impact on Luka's stats at all. So I'm not that worried to just keep going with Luka.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't know how else I would have to project him to not want to get to him, particularly in a matchup against Sacramento, one of the worst defenses in the league. That's just, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet. And if I'm biting the bullet, I will happily bite that with Luka Doncic, because he's clearly incredible. Porzingis, 8,800 on FanDuel, 9K on DK. Been playing pretty well as of late. That price tag feels a little high, though.
Yeah, I'm seeing in chat everyone's talking about how Luka is injured and he's playing through something. So that definitely is something to be considering. All right, Porzingis, yeah, 9K is just way too much for him. He's not playing as many minutes as those other 9K guys. So that's a big knock against him. And then he doesn't really have that kind of fantasy game, to be honest. So yeah. I don't understand it a ton, but I guess he's been having some big performances, I guess.
You interested in anybody else from Dallas? All these guys that are pretty terrible per minute guys, Maxi Kleber, Josh Richardson, DFS. Is there anything else here from the Mavs? I was hoping to unearth something from Dallas, but I'm not sure it's out there.
The matchup is solid, but I'm not seeing a ton here in fantasy.
I'm with you. Let's close this bad boy out. Minnesota Timberwolves at the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers are 8.5-point favorites. 234 total is the only game north of 230. So that's a pretty big one. Obviously, facing Minnesota in a DFS matchup, generally a pace-up spot, not a very good defense. For Minnesota, we've got Jalen Noel doubtful. And then we've got the questionable tag on Kawhi Leonard. Still no Patrick Beverley. Still no Serge Ibaka. So we'll start on the Minnesota side. Anthony Edwards, 7,400 on FanDuel, 7K on DK. Looks okay. Towns is 11K on FanDuel, 10-6 on Draftkings. Man, I look at this game and I look at the numbers for Minnesota, and I am having a little bit of trouble figuring out if there's someone out there that I really want to get to. Am I missing anybody that's standing out to you for the Timberwolves?
Yeah, none of the plays look like they're going to crack your lineup unless you go out of your way for it. So the one thing with this game is I feel like the Clippers are always one of those teams that comes up with some bogus injury stuff like at the last minute. So there is a possibility that like every game locks at 7:30. This one's not till 10.
Yeah.
So like it's going to be really hard to react to 7 news between 7:30 and 10 because you're not going to have any roster spots with guys from this game. So I don't think it's a bad strategy to just okay. The thing that sucks is if you pick a bunch of Clippers and Timberwolves, like your lineup is going to be toast if nothing happens. So you're really gambling that something will happen. What are you going to do here?
So I think that you can feel comfortable rostering any of the real players for Minnesota. If you get Anthony Edwards in your lineup, if you get Karl Anthony Towns in your lineup, I don't think that they are fantastic plays, but there's not a lot of downside to taking the actual basketball players here. I don't think that D'Angelo Russell is going to be on the floor for enough minutes to truly matter. He's 6,500 on FanDuel, 6,100 on DK. So my focus would basically be Edwards and Towns And then I would be incredibly apprehensive, but I would play some Jaden McDaniels just because he plays about 30 minutes a night. I don't like it, but 3,900, if I needed a piece of value, I think that's okay. If something weird happens, Minnesota probably has quite a few other pieces of terrible value that you can slot in if you really needed to. I just really don't like this Minnesota side. I thought that I would, but the Clippers are a really difficult matchup. Defense is solid. And the fact, like you mentioned it, the fact that it starts at 10 o'clock is a really big problem for this slate. Having 4 of the 5 games done, or at least locked 2.5 hours before this tips is crazy. Like there's no, on DraftKings, it's different. It's a lot easier to move few pieces around. But on Fanduel, if something happens in this game, you could be left playing someone that is basically truly useless if it goes wrong. Especially and we haven't even talked about the Clippers, who you never know what they're going to do post luck.
The thing is, like, people have won 100K, like, with the strategy of just waiting with these roster spots, because I remember Chipotle Addict, like, took down 100K, and I was like, how did he have, like, 3 Clippers? Like, all my, like, roster spots were locked a long time ago. So yeah. It has the potential to really pay off big, because most people aren't going to be considering the late swap. The Clippers would be the team that I'm a little bit more interested in. But then the problem is, if you're going for Kawhi and George, it's going to be hard to make swaps too, because if one of them is out, then you're not going to be able to spend the salary elsewhere productively. And I agree with the matchup being really tough. Like for Towns, he's averaged 48 points per game, and he's 11K. So on FanDuel. So that's like, I mean, that just is like a bad value, like on his face. And then you throw in the fact that this is a really tough matchup versus the Clippers, and it's just like almost inconceivable to spend 11K on him. So, man, how did they come up with that price tag? It's a little bit frustrating.
I don't know. And just imagine having Paul George in your lineup. Kawhi gets ruled in, Paul George gets ruled out, and you don't even have the $200 to move up from Paul George to Kawhi Leonard. Like, you're almost better off like treating Kawhi Leonard like he's Paul George in these lineups. Get him in a roster spot that you can swap to, just in case something squirrely happens. At the very least, you can still move down. But it's not like depending on how the roster spots shake out, it's not like you could pivot from Kawhi to Karl Anthony Towns very easily. Or you're just eating $4,000 of salary if you have to drop down to someone like Marcus Morris. This is a disaster of a game. But at the same time, like, there is a legitimate raw point ceiling on a 5-game slate for Paul George, for Kawhi Leonard, for Karl Anthony Towns, where they could just be necessary depending on how the earlier games shake out. It's a lot of high-end, high-dollar guys. And I assume we're going to go into past the 7:30 lock with wonder of what's going to happen on the Clippers side. My guess is we don't know if both of those guys are playing tonight. And honestly, against the Minnesota Timberwolves, if this line really is 8.5 right now, to me, that implies that one of those dudes isn't playing, because the Minnesota Timberwolves are terrible and the Clippers are one of the best teams in the league.
So their injury report says Kawhi is questionable tonight.
Yeah. Because I think that line moves to 11 or 12 if Kawhi Leonard is in this game. There's no way that they're not double-digit favorites against Minnesota.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, he's missed 4 games in a row, so it's really tough to know if he plays or if he doesn't. There is a possibility we get some clarity on that before lock, which would be helpful. But I think as it stands, if all we know going into lock is that Kawhi is questionable, I think you should bump up George's projection a little bit when you crunch your lineups, or if you are hand building, just put in a little bit more George than you might want to normally. Yeah. Because he's already like not bad, and then if Kawhi gets ruled out, you're gonna have a really low on play that's amazing.
And there are worse things than having Paul George, even if Kawhi Leonard happens to be in. Like, if that's the biggest mistake you made on the day, you'll probably be okay more often than not. Is there anything else you like from the Clippers? Let's assume for 1 second that Kawhi Leonard is out. Is there anybody else that really takes a big bump up for you on the Clippers side?
Marcus Morris would probably get a bump there. let's see. So if Kawhi sits, let me see who they've been starting. Okay, so last game, Reggie Jackson played a ton of minutes. With Patrick Beverly out, he should get a ton of run, and then he kind of needs Kawhi out to be a good fantasy value. So that's someone you can look at. I think Terrence Mann, he started a game? I can't remember if it was like the last one or
I think he started on the 14th. He played 28 minutes that day. He only played 18 minutes on the 16th. Assuming that wasn't the start, but admittedly, that recall on a day like today, not as easy as I would like it to be.
Yeah. So Kennard started the last one.
Yeah.
So Kennard isn't the best fantasy player, so that's a little bit tough to get to.
Yeah.
And then I don't think he's gonna be getting big minutes unless he starts. So
agreed.
That who are you looking at if Kawhi is out?
I mean, Reggie Jackson would be the guy that I feel the most comfortable with, but at the same time, he's already 5,600 on Fanduel, 5,700 on Draftkings. So I don't know if there's a lot of juice left to squeeze there. I think I might just cross my fingers and hope that it's Zubac falling into a couple extra minutes for this one. At least he's a good or generally good per minute performer. Whereas with Reggie Jackson or Morris, Kennard, Batum, like these guys are all very capable of going out there and playing 30 minutes and putting up 10 fantasy points. They're just, there's not a lot of like high end options there. I certainly don't want to go to Rondo if he's going to be at 4,100 on DK. I don't think that they look all that great, even taking Kawhi Leonard out of here, which is not ideal, but that's what happens when everybody's just in the mid fives. It gets a little blurry. It's all a little gray.
Yeah, definitely. This one, if Kawhi is out, I think there should be some nice plays, but I don't think they'll be the best of the slate, especially if some news comes out with Toronto with potentially some resting guys, or the other news we're looking for is Charlotte, where PJ Washington is questionable, as well as Devontae Graham.
5 games up, 5 games down, boss. Any final thoughts on this slate before we get out of here?
I think this one is going to be one where like whoever comes out as injured between now and lock, that's going to really determine the best plays of the slate.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of wild card where if Kawhi is still questionable at lock, I think like most people are going to be building lineups as if Kawhi Leonard plays. If you build lineups like he's out, it's tricky because you're going to be at a disadvantage if he does play. So what I'm going to do is boost Paul George's projection when I build my lineups, just because I think he's a fine play if Kawhi plays, but if he sits, then Paul George could be one of the best of the night.
There we go, everybody. Please enjoy your Sunday. Hit that like button too. 530 viewers on a Sunday is pretty nice for an early one. 120 likes though. I think we can get that ratio up. And please subscribe to the channel. That one helps us out a ton. The more subscriptions we get, the more content that we could actually provide. That will be better for you guys. I promise. Again, 3 more shows coming up later today. Don't miss it. You should hit that notification bell on the channel. You don't want to miss any of those shows. So thank you to the boss man, Alex Baker, for being here and joining me on this Sunday. It's normally I get a Rin-packed Sunday, but upgrade to the boss man today for me. I'm pretty happy about it. Good luck tonight, everybody. Enjoy the final couple hours of your weekend, and I'll see you guys again in the morning for the process show, 6:30 a.m. Be there or be somewhere else.
I don't think I've ever heard that one.
That's good.
Yeah.
Trademark Josh Engleman on that one.